working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On tonight's headlines. China announced a further relaxation of COVID control measures today, and that includes allowing some infected people to home quarantine as a nationwide policy and reining in unnecessary testing, according to people familiar with the matter. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. said the country is at risk of falling behind its ASEAN neighbors in its post-pandemic recovery targets unless it can ramp up its connectivity rate. Indonesia's parliament approved legislation that would outlaw sex outside marriage. And NASA's Orion spaceship made a close pass of the moon and used a gravity assist to whip itself back towards Earth, marking the start of the return journey for the Artemis 1 mission. First in our news, China just announced a further relaxation of COVID control measures today. And that includes allowing some infected people to home quarantine as a nationwide policy and reining in unnecessary testing, according to people familiar with the matter. The government continues to quickly ease its zero-tolerance strategy amid growing public discontent. In one of the key changes to be announced also, low-risk patients who test positive will be allowed to quarantine at home instead of being sent to an isolation facility, according to sources asking not to be named because they're not authorized to speak publicly. PCR testing will also be dialed back, except for high-risk groups. Shanghai had already exempted parks and tourist attractions from the testing requirement 2 days earlier, and what the latest rule change encompassed was still unclear. Neighboring Hangzhou, meanwhile, ended regular mass testing for its 10 million people, except those living in or visiting nursing homes, schools, and kindergartens. The testing requirement for public transport had been scrapped in the central city of Wuhan, where the coronavirus was first detected in late 2019, as well as in Jiangdong province. Local authorities across China have begun a slow rollback of the restrictions that have governed daily life for years, encouraged by the central government's orders for a new approach to fighting the coronavirus. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. said the country is at risk of falling behind its ASEAN neighbors in its post-pandemic recovery targets unless it can ramp up its connectivity rate. During the telecommunications summit at the Philippine International Convention Center in Pasay City last Tuesday, the president said the country has around 70% connectivity rate compared to its neighboring countries. Take a look.
Over the internet, whether it be by fiber optic cable, whether it be Starlink, whether it be from other satellites, whatever the system is appropriate, we need to explore it and we need to apply it. But we have to move quickly. When I look around, when I was in ASEAN and APEC, I saw that we were not too badly off, but we could do so much better. And if we are to compete properly with our neighbors, and that time will come, and it is coming now very, very quickly upon us, that time will, then when that time comes, we will have to compete with our neighbor countries, because the region is still going to be, in my estimation, in my view, this region is still going to be the driver of the global economy as soon as things, quote unquote, normalize. So I think then that's why we will have to compete and we will have to cooperate with our neighbors in the region. And to do that, we must be at the very least at the same level of digitalization as they are. Connectivity. Our connectivity rate is still pretty low. We're still below 70%. And that's not good enough, especially for an archipelagic country such as ours, where connectivity is exceedingly important because we have many isolated communities who need some form of contact, some form of communication with the rest of the country, with the rest of the world. And that is why that is a priority. And that is why, as I said at the very start, it is impossible to overstate the importance of connectivity, of the telcos, of all of our new technologies. Which is why we are doubling our efforts to reach the most remote parts of the country by providing access to mobile cellular services and Wi-Fi. In fact, we have been firm in intensively rolling out key programs such as the Broadband Masa program, the Free Wi-Fi for All program, the Zamboanga Basilan Wireless Broadband Network, the establishment of the National Government Data Center. These are just some of the projects that we are undertaking to make our people more adaptable and connected, especially in this age of what we have come to call the new normal.
Meanwhile, President Marcos also said the Philippine economy continues to recover from the negative impact of the pandemic, even after the country's inflation rate accelerated to 8% this November. In a speech during the 11th Arrancada Philippines Forum in Pasay City, the president said the country is on track to maintain its strong economic performance and achieve the government's growth target of 6.5 to 7.5% for this year. Take a look.
I'm happy to be able to inform you that the Philippine economy continues to recover from the negative impact of the pandemic. In fact, the country is on track to maintain its strong economic performance and achieve the government's growth target of 6.5 to 7.5% for 2022. Unfortunately, although our growth rate looks healthy, our foreign exchange has become, our peso has become a little stronger relative to the other currencies. Our unemployment rate is quite reasonable considering the situation. However, on the other side of that coin, there is still inflation that is running rampant and out of control. We just received the poor news from the Philippine statistics that November we hit 8%. And we are now trying to identify the areas of the economy that are the main drivers of that inflation. The main drivers of that inflation, unfortunately, are still imported. Imported inflation. So, again, import substitution is still a good idea, not only for foreign exchange reserve, but also so that we can keep our inflation rate down. But I think it is also time to look inwards into the domestic market here and develop our manufacturing capabilities, develop those markets, the local markets, and for that, we need the private sector to come in. As when we talk about manufacturing, we are talking about capital-intensive investments. And that is something that we are hoping will be, again, a driver for our economy in the next few years.
The president also said the government is accelerating the country's economic growth by further easing travel and mobility restrictions, implementing economic reforms, and improving economic cooperation with trade and investment partners. He also said the government is also enhancing the ease of doing business and public-private partnerships and improving bureaucratic efficiency through information and communication technology, development, and digitalization. Launched in 2010, the Arrancada Philippines is a major advocacy of the JFC to increase investment and employment in the country. The forum is an annual event where business leaders and public officials convene to share ideas on improving the nation's business and investment climate. The theme for this year's gathering is Reform, Rebuild, Recover, which aims to shed light on how policy reforms can accelerate and sustain economic recovery. 3 people died and 4 others were wounded after a bomb exploded on a roadside in Thailand's troubled Deep South, according to police. The 7 state railway employees were on their way to fix a section of track in Songkhla province near the Malaysian border, which had been damaged in another bomb attack on Saturday. Take a look. The latest bomb was hidden around 200 meters from the site of the earlier explosion. We believe the bomb had been there since Saturday, according to Police Colonel Charchai Chanasit, adding that no other explosive devices had been found. A low-level conflict has simmered in Thailand's south since 2004, killing more than 7,000 people as rebels in the Muslim-majority region battle for greater autonomy from the state. The area, heavily policed by Thai security forces, is culturally distinct from Buddhist-majority Thailand, which took control of the region over a century ago. Indonesia's parliament approved legislation that would outlaw sex outside marriage. After the text was endorsed by all 9 parties in a sweeping overhaul of the criminal code, Deputy House Speaker Sufmi Dasko Ahmad banged the gavel to signal the text was approved and shouted it was legal. The revision of Indonesia's criminal code, which stretches back to the Dutch colonial era, had been debated for decades. Rights groups protested against the amendments, denouncing them as a crackdown on civil liberties and political freedoms, as well as a shift towards fundamentalism in Muslim-majority Indonesia, where the constitution recognizes 5 religions outside Islam. The new code, which still needs to be approved by President Joko Widodo, will come into force after 3 years. The amended code says sex outside marriage is punishable by a year in jail and cohabitation by 6 months, but adultery charges must be based on police reports lodged by a spouse, parents, or children. Citizens could also face a 10-year prison term for associating with organizations that follow Marxist-Leninist ideology and a 4-year sentence for spreading communism. Several other countries prohibit adultery and enforce harsh punishments on extramarital affairs, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and the Philippines. To Indonesia now, where villagers are leaving their shelters to salvage items from their houses which have been damaged or inundated by volcanic mud following the eruption of Mount Semeru in Indonesia's East Java province. Heavy downpour, meanwhile, after the eruption, turned the volcanic ashes into mud, which was flowing into villages near the volcano. Take a look.
Hari Seninnya ini susulan. Yang kemarin kan masih bisa masuk ke dalam rumah itu, tapi sekarang sudah nggak bisa masuk. Banyak itu bekas di dalam, tapi yang sudah nggak bisa diambil. Saya kambing juga kan.
The eruption last year left locals combing through ruined belongings after their homes were blanketed in ash. It remains to be seen what damage the eruption will inflict this time, with the lava still edging towards homes and their owners told to remain 8 kilometers from the crater. Many villagers, mostly women and children, took shelter in local halls and schools, some as far as 20 kilometers away. In other news, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres slammed multinational corporations for turning the world's ecosystems into playthings of profit and warned failure to correct course would lead to catastrophic results. Take a look.
Multinational corporations are filling their bank accounts while emptying our world of its natural gifts. Ecosystems have become playthings of profit. With our bottomless appetite for unchecked and unequal economic growth, humanity has become a weapon of mass extinction. We are treating nature like a toilet, and ultimately, we are committing suicide by proxy. Because the loss of nature and biodiversity comes with a steep human cost. We need nothing less from this meeting than a bold post-2020 global biodiversity framework. One that beats back the biodiversity apocalypse by urgently tackling its drivers: land and sea use change, overexploitation of species, climate change, pollution, and invasive non-native species.
But the state of the planet is in a serious crisis. Crisis under climate change, crisis of pollution, crisis of the loss of biodiversity.
But it's absolutely critical that all negotiators and all negotiating leads realize that it's down to the wire now, and it's time to come under the big tent. But a few days to act decisively and with principle. And action must be bold, not bracketed, so that we can get this deal done.
Nearly 200 countries have gathered for the December 7 to the 19th meeting in an effort to hammer out a Paris moment for nature. The challenges are daunting. 1 million species are at risk of extinction. 1/3 of all land is severely degraded, and fertile soil is being lost, while pollution and climate change are accelerating degradation of the oceans. Chemicals, plastics, and air pollution are choking land, water, and air, while planetary heating brought about by burning fossil fuels are causing climate chaos, from heat waves and forest fires to droughts and floods. In other news, Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha said he wants to rule until 2025, indicating for the first time that he plans to stand in the kingdom's upcoming general election. Now, Thailand is due to go to the polls early next year, and on Tuesday, the main opposition, the Pheu Thai Party, launched some of its campaign themes. Now, Mr. Prayut came to power as army chief in a 2014 coup before cementing his position in a controversial 2019 election, but his popularity has been in the doldrums. Pheu Thai is riding high in the polls, but the current Thai constitution, drafted under military rule, stacks the system in favor of army-linked parties. In September, the Constitutional Court ruled Mr. Prayut's 8-year term limit as Prime Minister would end in 2025. And as he left a weekly cabinet meeting on Tuesday, he was asked about his plans. Mr. Prayut is widely expected to leave his Palang Prakarat party, which leads the current ruling coalition, and join a new party thought to be set up specifically for him before the election. But on Tuesday, he refused to confirm the rumor, saying only that "I will speak about it later." The date of the election has not been decided, but if it is not dissolved early, Parliament will end its term in March, setting the stage for a vote in May. In tonight's other news, President Joe Biden declared the comeback of U.S. manufacturing at the site of a mammoth expansion to a Taiwanese-owned semiconductor plant aimed at breaking risky U.S. dependency on foreign-based producers for the vital component. Take a look.
American manufacturing is back, folks. American manufacturing is back. All told, TSMC is investing $40 billion here in Arizona, the largest foreign investment in the history of this state. Over 10,000 construction jobs and 10,000 high-tech jobs will be created.
The project by TSMC, the world's biggest maker of leading-edge chips, would go a long way to meeting the U.S. goal of ending reliance on foreign-located factories, particularly in Taiwan, which is under constant threat of being absorbed or even invaded by China. TSMC, or Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, announced it is building a second Phoenix plant by 2026, ballooning its investment in Arizona from $12 billion to $40 billion US, with a target of producing some 600,000 microchips a year. About 10,000 high-tech jobs will be created once both plants are working, according to the company. White House National Economic Council Director Brian Deese said The major milestone is one of the largest foreign direct investments in U.S. history, while TSMC Chairman Mark Liu heralded a giant step forward. And NASA's Orion spaceship made a close pass of the moon and used the gravity assist to whip itself back towards Earth, marking the start of the return journey for the Artemis 1 mission. Orion is expected to splash down in the Pacific Ocean off San Diego on Sunday, December 11 at 9:40 a.m. local time. Let's listen in.
We are on flight day 20 of our planned 26-day mission, and we continue to proceed along the planned mission profile. As Sandra indicated earlier, we did successfully complete the return-powered flyby and are now committed to an Earth return trajectory on the 11th. We also reviewed some anomalies from over the weekend. We did have a unplanned communications outage at the Deep Space Network Goldstone site in California. There was a site-wide outage at Goldstone due to some hardware that's used to process the site and antenna angles. That was recovered last night, but on Saturday we did have a 4.5-hour comm outage.
We have a designated primary site that we try to land at first, and that's called San Diego Site 3. That's within the Fleet of Hot area, which is the fleet training area, hot as in hot munitions. So that is controlled by the Navy. So that's our first target that we try to land at, assuming that the weather and criteria is all favorable, not only for the hardware of the capsule, but also for Melissa's team to recover the capsule once it's in the water.
Mondays was the last major maneuver of the mission, which began when NASA's Mega Moon rocket SLS blasted off from Florida on November 16. From start to finish, the journey should last 25.5 days. Orion will now make only slight course corrections until it splashes down in the Pacific Ocean off San Diego on Sunday, December 11 at 9:40 a.m. local time. It'll then be recovered and hoisted aboard a U.S. Navy ship. One of the challenges of Artemis 1 is to successfully re-enter the Earth's atmosphere at very high speed to test the performance of its heat shield and to successfully complete the landing in the Pacific. NASA will conduct scientific experiments in deep space with several CubeSat or nanosatellites deployed during the mission. If the results of this mission, which should last from 4 to 6 weeks, are validated, it will be followed by the Artemis 2 mission, which will carry 4 astronauts around the moon on board the Orion spacecraft. Under the Artemis program, named for the sister of Apollo in Greek mythology, the U.S. is seeking to build a lasting presence on the moon in preparation for an onward voyage to Mars. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast of ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.